Welcome to Veronica Live, and I am here with, he's becoming a Veronica regular. We've got Jamie Miller, and you can find him at X at REP Jam, Rep Jam, and he's on Substack, Reasonable Arguments, but I might have to argue with him today. Welcome back to Veronica Live, Jamie.
Oh, well, I hope we don't argue too much. I find that I'm most often in violent agreement with you.
I know, violent agreement. And I just had an espresso before coming on to just boost myself because I feel like I need combat pay because I'm continually having to watch these Democrat events and nobody gives me combat pay. So anyways.
That's the truth.
Well, last night, I know you had it on because you were tweeting, and then you wrote a beautiful op-ed that you released called Who Won the Debate? So let's just kick it off. I mean, who won the debate? Who do you think?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think, if we're going to be intellectually honest, it was a tie. And I'm going to categorize that a few ways from a political operative standpoint. So, I think if you were watching it and you're watching 90 minutes, Kamala Harris exceeded expectations, and a lot of people categorize a win that way. And certainly the media is categorizing a win that she exceeded expectations, so she won the debate. But if you take a step back and you look at it of where the race was going into the debate, and Harris was dropping, I won't say like a stone, but I have used the metaphor of, the air was coming slowly out of the balloon, right? And so she was losing about a half a point nationally per week, and which is significant. And, especially with 6 to 8 weeks to go. And so she needed to, Trump was gaining. So we had these, so here we're at the crossroads of the debate. So she needed to stop the bleeding, and she did. And so in that regard, she did what she needed to do. But then when you look at, well, what did Trump need to do? Trump has a base of support. People really tuned in to say, what is Harris all about? And, I use my wife, who is non-political at all, and she's watching it. And Harris did a better job of engaging with the camera.
Yeah.
Directly connecting with the audience.
Yeah.
But my wife said, when I knew she was lying about things, she's looking dead square into the camera, lying to me. And I've just had enough relationships in my life where people have looked me in the face and lied to me that I can never trust her. And I don't know that is going to be the prevailing thought coming out of the debate. But, we're talking about slivers of margins here that will determine the election. And I put my wife in that margin of, she could vote Democrat, she could vote Republican, she could decide not to vote. She's not a hardcore, hardcore Republican voter. And she first voted for Trump in 2016, and that was the first time she ever voted in her life. And so,
really,
so I just, I do think that she's a fair barometer. Now, I think that she's probably influenced a little bit by me, and she is probably more aware of when Harris was lying. Right.
Just so why was 2016 the first time she voted? Because I was the Trump chair in 2015, 16, and I met a lot that was the first time they ever voted too.
Yeah, so, she would say, and I've heard her say almost these exact words, although I don't like to speak for other people, but even my wife. But she used the words that she's from Pittsburgh, and I'm a Pittsburgh girl, and I like people to tell me how it is and shoot straight. And that's
okay.
He was the first politician who ever did that. So I registered to vote and voted for him.
Wow. That says a lot. Well, I saw it as a cage match because I really felt Trump never got to relax the whole 90 minutes. It was 3 against 1. And then I used to be in love with David Muir until last night. He was my fantasy crush, and he crushed it. He's no longer my crush because he kept coming after Trump, and he was awful. And I felt, it was 3-on-1. It was 3-on-1, and people are like, "Oh, Trump was so rough." But when you're attacked by three people, it was like a middle school in the playground. People are punching you. You kind of punch back.
Well, and here's the thing: the moderators came in with a fact check that was wrong right out of the gate. That was planned and coordinated. They planned and coordinated the abortion question to be up front.
Yeah.
They planned the fact check up front, knowing that what Trump had said in the past, and coming up with this false fact check that about abortion in 9 states, and saying that did not exist in any state, but it exists in 9 states. And you then add to that, every time Trump counterpunched, they came in and saved the day. Every single time he counterpunched her, they never returned to her. Every time she counterpunched him, they returned to Trump. And every time he counterpunched her, it was, hey, we're gonna go back to Trump, And at one time they even said something along the lines of, Donald Trump, tell us why you're wrong, and then they go, oh, Kamala Harris, you tell us why Trump's wrong. Like it was just a ridiculous debate, and that's another reason why I think it's a tie. Harris exceeded expectations. There's no question about that. But when you start looking, the other thing you have to look at is what's the long-term impact of this debate. If this debate were October 15th, it may be different, but it was on September 10th. And, it's still 3 weeks before any voters of any consequence vote. I mean, I think North Carolina voters may get mail-in ballots mailed sometime this week or next.
Which I just sent you. I texted you right before we came on air. Breaking news: widespread delivery problems with the U.S. mail could disrupt voting in the presidential election. Officials say from AP. So now the post office is already going to start doing some shenanigans. And actually, John, he's my co-host a lot. This last election, it was 2 elections ago. His ballot came to Georgia 2 weeks late after the election. So I think they've already had a dry run with this. So I'm concerned. So I put on X already before we came on, the show, that we need to vote early and vote in person. You just got to do it because you got to make sure it counts.
In Florida, it's a little bit different because a voter can track their absentee ballot from the time they mail it to the time it gets back to the supervisor of elections, and so they can know when it's received if they sign up for that notification at their supervisor of elections office. So Florida's way ahead of the curve, and I hate to use the word progressive, but we're very progressive in our ballot access, in our ability to vote, the ability to register, and access to the polls. We have in Miami-Dade County, I think we have the ballot accessible in more languages than anywhere else in the world. And so, I think the rule there is that if you have a population that speaks the language at home, of 10,000 or more in any county, that you have to have access to the ballot in that language. And so
that's impressive. I didn't realize
there's an
it.
incredible number of languages. I want to say it's more than 100 type of languages that are accessible in Miami-Dade via ballot access. So, and that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
That's
so
incredible.
Florida
Wow.
can be very proud of our voting systems. It's not that there isn't work to be done, but, we're talking about a national campaign, and I know that you have reach outside the state of Florida. And so some of these other areas have real work to do. And as far as their ballot integrity, their poll watching rules, their mail-in ballot rules, their canvassing rules, their audit rules, their rules for, in Minnesota, you can register the same day as the election, and all you need is a power bill. You don't even need an ID.
Lovely. Great. So I can be an illegal and bring my power bill.
Yeah, people can use multiple different the same power bill for multiple people to register to vote. And so these aren't, I always say that unless you're talking about a computer, hack, the amount of fraud is finite, right? There's only
In
a certain
Florida, I
amount of
believe it's
fraud
finite.
that can occur.
Because
No,
when I go
everywhere
to my polling station, the people know me, because I'm the pseudo. I'm not the mayor of our county, but I kind of am because people know me. And so,
I
if I
get
don't
that.
sign it correctly, one time I didn't sign, I just, signed a V for Veronica because that's what I do on all my credit card stuff. And the lady who knew me was like, "Ma'am, Veronica, that doesn't match your driver's license. You need to try again." So I was like, "What?" So me.
In some places they don't have that. You don't have to match. You don't have to show a driver's license, obviously. And then other places, depending on the type of voter check-in process they have, and this was something that we fixed in Florida. You have the workbook, you can have a signature page, and then they would have the signature that's on file for you.
No, that's here. That's here. In my case, so you're
right
telling me
underneath,
not throughout Florida, this isn't the norm, what I've experienced for the last almost 11 years voting in person? That's not a Florida-wide thing?
Yeah, so no, that's not a Florida. So,
really?
So for instance, what I would advocate then is that, because you can see how people could very easily, I believe that most fraud still exists mostly within the precincts after the polls have closed, and it is a conspiracy among those 1 to 3, quote, daily poll workers who decide that Veronica didn't show up to vote. I know Veronica. I'll go ahead and vote for her. I know how she wanted to vote. Right? And so they sign your name and your signature's right there so they can kind of match it. So they can sign your name and then vote the ballot. That's the way these things happen. That's why it takes to the middle of the night.
Well, our Navy or
Polk County, Georgia, and
our county here was run. Our supervisor of election for numerous years was a former Navy SEAL, so he ran it like a tight ship. But so back to the debate, because you wrote this awesome op-ed, and I felt like I was in college. I printed it out, and I've underlined things with questions.
I probably should have printed it out for me too. Then,
what did I write? I'll go through it because you're so brilliant, But back to the abortion issue, I feel like they started with that issue because, for example, my husband, who he's not like a political, crazy person like I am. About halfway through, he couldn't take it anymore. So he's like, "See ya." So of course, I would want if I was on the Kamala team, I would want abortion to be up front, because we lost the fighter pilot, left the room, and he was done with it all. So don't you? Isn't it a sad state of affairs that in our country that abortion is the number one? The first kind of thing.
It was planned because they wanted to throw Trump off it from the very beginning. They didn't.
I thought his responses were good. I mean, he was strong
but go ahead.
Well, he was strong because he's like, I'm for abortion and incest, rape, and the life of the mother, and he was strong when he delivered that.
Yeah, I thought his abortion answer was strong. I did think that he. In that particular question, it seemed like everybody wanted to move on, and then Trump wanted to keep making his point. And so he extended that question longer than I think it would have gone, which was not in his favor. So, those are things that come up during debate prep. Trump prides himself on not doing debate prep, and that was an example of where it showed, right? Like, it's just, hey, if you can get off the abortion question, get off of it. Like, stop talking about it, and let's move on. And, and he, I think, went back to it twice, because he responded, then Harris wanted a response, and then he responded yet again. So there was,
well, he was trying to call her out on the, the partial birth abortion and after when babies are born with a botched abortion. And she would not answer that question,
No, she would not. And yeah.
And then, of course, the moderators were like, "Oh, that's not true." And I mean, you have it here in your op-ed that 9 states allow this, which is just atrocious. I mean, it's just horrible. But that was the first issue. And then let's see here. have got all my little chicken scratch here. I mean, how do you think she did though? Because I found that she was so scripted, and X blew up saying for sure she had the questions ahead of time. Do you feel that way?
I think the questions were so apparent that anybody who was doing a decent debate prep could have guessed them and prepared her for them. So I'm not going to go so far to say that they gave her the questions ahead of time, because I don't know that there was anything asked that I wouldn't have prepared Donald Trump for if I was doing his debate prep. She did have a couple of moments where where Trump did get a counterpunch in. He called her Marxist, and that's when she literally smiled through gritted teeth with her hand up to her chin. And it's funny because my progressive friends who I've spoken to love that moment. They thought that she was just standing. They thought that she was standing strong in the winds of hate, in the winds of damnation. And so, but I thought it was a bad moment for her. I thought it was a bad look for her. I think she realized she was gritting her teeth and stopped.
But I've
she was
never
smiling and
seen.
she stopped.
You've seen a zillion debates. I've seen a zillion debates. I've never seen anybody put their hand under their chin. And so
Never.
I screenshotted that. I posted that on several big player X's, and I got like 300,000 views last night. A lot of them came from that photo because I said, that she's a Karen, and it was such a turnoff. And the comments that people wrote about the photo, and it was shared a zillion times, because
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's the thing. I think, for example, like a normal alpha man that it sat through that for 90 minutes, she was definitely a turnoff, I think. And, that it's always harder for women because you don't want to turn off men and they think that you're, their ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, and she kind of came off that way with Trump. And you wrote in your op-ed that the major issue tonight was the failure of ABC News to moderate a fair debate. And I really thought they were going to be fair because CNN, and one of the tweets I put out there was, CNN looks legit now after this ABC debate because they were so in the bag for Kamala, and it wasn't fair. So
The only thing you could argue about CNN is they didn't bring up the major conflicts of Ukraine and Gaza. But as far as trying to save Biden, or at this point, if you're going to say there was a conspiracy with CNN, the conspiracy was to get Biden out of the race, and they were part of that, right? So they just gave Biden enough rope to hang himself, and hang himself he did.
Well, and then I read a factoid, which I'd forgotten since June. This is only, I guess, the second ever debate without a live audience, that does seem so weird to me that, because I think, people can feed off the crowd and then you kind of get more of a vibe of what's going down. I mean, does that bother you that there wasn't a live audience again?
Not at all. I could argue that either way. I've prepared candidates for both types of debates. It's a little bit harder to prepare a candidate for a live audience debate, simply because, emotions run higher, right? And I think that's an Achilles heel for both of these candidates, and so, Trump has the ability to get too high and then think, oh, I'm going to win it with one punch. And then he would have come across looking like Rick Lazio when he debated Hillary Clinton for the U.S. Senate in New York. So I thought it was important that Trump come out of this debate without, quote, a bullying moment. Mm-hmm. And he certainly did that, right? So, and who could blame him? There couldn't have been a bully moment after she came out swinging like she did, and the moderators came out swinging like they did. So even if he had that moment, I think it would have been dismissed because of the tone of Harris during the debate. So I thought that she, while she set several traps for Trump and he fell into them, I think the trap that she fell into, that I don't even know that Trump set for her. I think it was just it was probably part of the emotional pregame of their strategy that did not play in her favor was her coming out swinging instead of, I think she probably would have been better served if Trump hit her first and she counterpunched instead of her coming out swinging. And I think that was probably as much of a trap that Trump had emotionally set for her. And then she just kept doing it all night long. And in that moment, in those moments, she failed to articulate to the American people any sense of policy or any sense of confidence that she was capable of running the country. So, I in that regard, yeah, she failed the debate. That's not part of what all the talking heads are talking about today. And it's part of what I talk about, will this debate have long-term implications in the campaign? And my guess is that it will not. He had his MAGA hat moment. I'm sure she had a moment that you'll see on a TV commercial or whatever. But, there wasn't that Reagan moment of, I'm not going to use my opponent's youth and experience against me.
Well, I will say, I thought the debate showcased that, he's 78. I mean, he can debate three people for 90 minutes. All his faculties are there. So all of
the Democrats who wanted to see him show up and perform like Joe Biden were sadly disappointed.
Right.
That's for sure.
No, he was on fire. So I want to go through your points, but before we jump to the points in your wonderful, reasonable argument, op-ed, who won the debate, you talk about, and it was so Trump. After the debate, he comes, he's working the entire room full of 5 million media, ends up on Fox News, because I had Fox News on, which was great because they had J.D. Vance, Rubio came on, he came on, and she gets carted off to a party, and I'm like, I wonder, all those people taking pictures of her, and once again, nobody asked a hard question. So what were your thoughts on that? I mean, to me, that just showcases, it's a late hour, Trump's still working the room.
Yes, the fact that they came out immediately after the debate and called for another debate meant to me that she had a major flaw, or the campaign saw a major flaw that they know will be exposed in the coming days, probably pretty early in the debate.
Well, I already have it. I've got the town hall article. Talks about Charlottesville hoax, bloodbath hoax, the killing of all the J6, the cops supposedly that were killed. So no, they're calling her out already on all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're on the Harris campaign team, all of those things are things you're going to throw red meat because it's been out there for so long, right? And whether it's a hoax or not, there's enough people and enough media that have reported upon it that it's reported about it, that it's I don't want to say ingrained in the public psyche, but it kind of is. And so, but I think there's something, and I have not watched. I watched it one time live, wrote it, and then have been talking about it ever since. So
I was going to print it out, but it was 55 pages, and I was like, oh no, because there's only a few things I wanted, and I was like, I'm not printing out 55 pages.
The town hall thing was 55 pages.
Last night it was 55 pages. The debate. Print it out. The transcript.
Yeah, I got you. The transcript. Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to reread it and go back over it. I really haven't watched much TV to even see what most of the talking heads were talking about. When I was writing it last night, I was flipping back between channels just to see how which ones were taking
thought Trump didn't do well, but there are polls that are coming out. Let's see, I've screenshot a bunch of them that he won. So that's the thing. He definitely beat her, and I mean, I've seen a ton of polls that have said that he won. So maybe he didn't do that bad. Honestly.
No, here's the thing. He didn't do bad, and he did not lose the debate. I don't think he won it. She did not do bad, but she did not win the debate either. And so, that's why I call the debate a push. Like, there's not a clear winner of this debate. And, there are moments where people, from both sides can shake their fists in the air and say, hey, we claim victory because of this. But at the end of the day, this was going into it, a very close race where Harris was losing support. I think she stopped that losing of support with this debate, which in that regard, it's a victory for her. But Trump also had the ability to have that moment that, everybody thinks he's capable of having, where it's like, oh, he came across as just too big of a jerk to a woman, and he did not have that moment. And so, when you start looking at all these things together, and you look at the long-term impact, by next Monday, the polls are going to be back on the same trajectory they were on in all likelihood.
And I've been reading that all day from all the people, all the famous people on X. But the C-SPAN poll immediately following the debate had Kamala at 25% winning it, and Donald Trump at 75%, and that was 100,000 people. So it was just a little peak. That was one of them.
Where nobody's arguing, nobody's making the argument that Harris won on the important topics of jobs, economy, inflation, and illegal immigration. No one's arguing. Those are the four major topics that 60 to 70% of undecided voters say are most important to them. And the poll that matters is, how did people watching the debate see each candidate on those four issues? And Trump clearly dominated her on those four issues. So in that regard, it was a win for him.
Yeah. Well, I just felt like she wasn't really sharing her policies, which ... came out Sunday night, which we found out yesterday were copied from Biden's policies pretty much. So, I'm like, how can you be running for president and not have these? But then what did he say at the end when he was asked about his policies? He's got to come up with them, or I don't know. He wasn't like set in stone. The delivery, he said,
they were talking about
his
health care, and that was probably the lowest.
That was weak. I didn't like that answer. Okay, let's see here. Let's go through some of your talking points. So you think it was, again, who won the debate? It's a toss up. Both did well. I mean, she did better than I thought, because it's always, I think, harder for women sometimes to be forceful.
I think I call it a push, but toss-up, yes.
Okay. And then, you had a funny comment in here about, does Harris have a Howard Dean moment? And then you wrote, I'm sure someone will create the meme that's 100 faces of Harris during a debate. And I've seen it, Jamie. It's on X already.
If I was more talented, I would have come up with it myself, but I'm just not that graphically talented, so...
Yeah. So, and back to her policies, have you looked through them? I mean, is anything moving to you? I just feel like when it comes to the policies, we're $25,000 for a first-time homeowner. They always talk about the Pell Grant, the child care. I mean, are we giving away everything to everyone?
It's funny because every time Republicans talk about a tax cut, Democrats in the media say, how are we going to pay for it? And yet, when she comes up with policies with all these giveaways, not one person has asked her how she's going to pay for it. And so, it just, once again, is the hypocrisy of the media, the media agenda setting, and just a general lack of fairness from the media, that they won't ask even the most simple questions to both sides. And so, that I hope your listeners, whenever they have these debates with their friends, ask their friends and family, how is she going to pay for all of these things? We are, $30-something trillion in debt. And, I would prefer not getting out of debt by renting Yellowstone Park to the communist China. But, so that's, that was always Obama's argument for increasing the debt. It's like, well, look at our natural resources. Nobody's going to come take those away from us. I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to use, Old Faithful to pay the bills? I don't know. Like, are we going to? I don't know. So it is interesting to me that we nobody ever asked her how she's going to pay for all of these giveaway programs.
No, well, and she opened that, she's going to help middle class, and that's what, when you read her policies, it says that, and I don't know. It's so frustrating.
Well,
okay.
She talks about tax cuts for the middle class and poor, and she's not talking about tax cuts for the middle class. She's talking about tax credits. and I know that this is kind of a fine line, that a nuance that your listeners may or may not care about, but tax credits are for people who have not paid taxes. Tax cuts are for people who pay taxes and to allow them to pay less in taxes. So tax credits are just more giveaways, with her not giving any way to any explanation on it.
Well, like the small businesses, right? She wants to promote, the growth of all these small businesses, and I think you can start one with $50,000. And so I'm like, who's paying for that? I guess you and I are, right. Jamie. Okay, so you wrote, do the moderators become the story? They did, and yes, I hate when I just feel like we need to clean the FBI out, the CIA out, but we also need a cleaning of. I want journalists to become journalists again. And I don't want to know if you're right or left. I mean, of course, there's going to be people we know that are on the right, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, but there's nobody in the middle anymore. And they were so on her team yesterday.
Yes. I mean, it's, and quite frankly, I think at the end of the day, they did her a disservice, because one thing, like you've mentioned, is that as a woman, and I've worked for many, many Republican women candidates. In fact, that's one thing I'd like to say that I'm known for being effective at is running female campaigns for women Republicans. And so as working, with women so closely, I've seen kind of, the trials and tribulations that women go through. And, it almost seemed like the media, the moderators felt like, oh, we need to protect the poor woman. And that's exactly what they did. And that's the exact persona that she's trying to, fight out of. And yet there they were, leading into this, kind of, and I don't think that very many people are going to say that out loud, and maybe I'm foolish for doing so. But I think that the public sees that. And the public sees, they see these nuances over time. When they watched it real time, it's like, oh yeah, this is, they don't really notice it. But 2 weeks later, it's kind of like, yeah, like she's really not standing on her own 2 feet. She's hiding from reporters. She's only doing scripted things. She doesn't have any real policies other than Joe Biden's on her website. And then when she did have a debate, she had the moderators have to protect her. Is that somebody who really is strong enough to lead our country, and be the leader of the free world and commander in chief? No, it's not.
Well, that was your next question. Who is seen as more presidential following the debate? And I feel like she can't ever do anything alone, because when she did the CNN interview, she had her ball and chain, Tim Walz sitting next to her. So,
right.
She can't do anything alone. So did she look presidential at all? That's a question for you, Jamie.
I think some people would say that she did. Did I? I thought she did a fine job. She exceeded expectations. I don't think you can take that away from her. She was clearly prepared. The bar was very low for her, and she cleared it. But I think she even cleared it higher than what most people expected. Like even those who thought she would do fairly well, I thought she did an admirable job.
You're so nice.
She said anything. Not that she said anything.
She didn't say anything. And then why? And the question is, what? You've had 3.5 years. Plus, we know. I just had Ron Hart on my show, and he's syndicated columnist. He's famous in his world, and so I asked him when he was on. I said, how long have you known that he's had dementia? And he's like, 3 years, Veronica. I've known for 3 years. Yeah. So
they knew They knew when he was running in 2020. That's why they hid him in the basement and used COVID as an excuse for him not to campaign. I mean, they've known for a very long time that he was mentally compromised.
Yeah. All right. So then you write, can either candidate make a mid-debate strategy change? I mean, what is? I think now we know what their policies, but she never talks about them, and we have more questions for her. I want to know. I want to hear it out of her mouth about the transgender stuff. She just no hard questions are ever asked, Jamie.
Right. I think both of them midway. And I asked that question kind of with Joe Biden's the first debate of 2020 in my mind, where I felt like Trump should have pivoted from being an attacker to being a uniter, and he just kept attacking, and I felt like that was the beginning of kind of the air coming out of the balloon for his campaign in 2020. And so I asked that question just to kind of like, oh, is this going to happen again for either one of them? You know, I don't think that I think halfway through the debate, they both thought they were winning it, so they kept their strategy the same.
Okay. And then I didn't like when she went after him about, and this totally got under his skin, because if you've ever been to a Trump rally, and I, in 2015, 16, worked 5 of them, that's when I knew, just being at them and working them, that he was a rock star, because who fills stadiums? Not political candidates. And then she got under his skin when she said, people leave his rallies early because they're boring, and he lost it there.
Yeah, and he delved into the cats and dogs being eaten by Haitians, which that's either true or it's not. It's going to come out to light. We certainly know already.
Well, today it's true. It's all over.
They've attacked. That they're the 911 calls about geese being taken out of the lake in that town.
I've seen the pictures,
being carried
Jamie.
down the road. And so, so if you have some of the cat and dog pictures, those are the types of things that are going to be a long-term impact. But it's very easy for him to pivot from the cats and dogs situation to Americans being murdered by illegal immigrants, and that's going on almost every day. And it's going on in every state in the union and every city in our country. And so it's a small pivot, because the underlying attack there by Trump is that, we have, you're talking about a city with 60,000 people that now has 20,000 Haitians in it. 1/3 of their population has changed over like the last 4 years.
I'm sure you've seen the sound bites. I mean, the people are upset. They've been there 40 years. Nothing's the same. And you go from a quiet, sleepy little town to now there's crime, and, they're locking down everything in the stores. And
it's horrible. It's horrible.
And they don't have money to move these people. These are just working class people. They're stuck there.
And it's coming to a town near you. This is not one little town in, Harris says that she wants to, have 2 or 3 stations, along the border that allow 15,000 people a day come in. That's the size of Sarasota, Florida. If it's 30,000 people, one every day you're going to allow a Sarasota, Florida just to come across the border. I mean, Sarasota is a small town, but it's not that small of a town. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And so, so my point is the long-term, that goes back under the long-term impact of the debate. So Trump has plenty of time to pivot. I would have rather him say, that, hey, there are too many Americans that have been killed by illegal immigrants.
Well,
There's
the
too many
funny
to count.
thing, Jamie, was yesterday, Congress is holding like congressional hearings with people that have lost family members, and they had the mother of Jocelyn, the 12-year-old, who went 2 minutes away to the little convenience store and was killed. And I don't know if you saw her testimony. Senator Ted Cruz shared it, and it's like 6 minutes, and it was, the words were like, stabbed you in the heart. So, and I saw another one talking too. I don't know who her loved one was, but she was like, I'm an independent voter and this is a problem, and nobody's listening. And so I know Trump hit it on immigration a little bit, but not hard enough.
And it's not isolated.
Right.
This is the thing. We know out here in the world, they know in Western Pennsylvania, they know in Philadelphia, they know in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Fulton County, Georgia, all of these places, that this is happening everywhere. It is not isolated, and it is more prevalent than is being reported in the national media. But everybody feels it. Like when you have polling that suggests that people are scared of losing their job because of illegal immigration, That's a problem, and that's a problem for Harris. And it's something that she must address, whether she does it in a debate or somewhere else.
Well, that should have been the opener, immigration, because to me, immigration and the economy, that is what's bothering all of Americans right now.
Well, and that's part of her campaign team should have been lobbying ABC News to try to figure out whether abortion was coming first. Not that you always get that information, but you can kind of get an indicator of how these things are going to go. And I'm not saying they didn't do that. I'm just saying that, she obviously did much more debate prep than he did, and it showed. Yeah. And in that regard, the debate was a winner for her. She came across as more prepared for the debate than he did.
Well, okay, and you're such a forward thinker, Jamie. You do know that, right? Because your next question,
thank you.
I'm so impressed. That's why I keep calling. Does the assassination attempt come up during the questions and the school shooting? Which, so I just want to comment on the shooting part. When she said she was a gun owner, I didn't believe that at all. I didn't believe it. I know Walls is, because I saw him in his little opening DNC video shooting a duck that fell out of the sky, which I was surprised that with the libs that don't like to kill things, that was in his opening video at the DNC.
Somebody else probably shot it and then threw it up in the air and took a picture of it.
Well, and guess who had to bring up the assassination? Trump.
Yeah.
So
Trump had to listen.
It's like it hasn't even happened. I'm telling you, it's so frustrating.
And I don't remember if I wrote it there or in one of the posts, but Trump had to moderate this debate himself.
Oh no, you wrote that in here. Yes.
And so that was, unfortunate. It's a failure of ABC News that a candidate had to literally moderate the debate himself to even have close to a fair shake. And to his credit, Trump did it. He did it successfully and was very good at it. So I was. If you're grading this, I don't know. I haven't really kept a tally sheet, but that's certainly, you can see why I say it's a push, because that was certainly a win for Trump that he successfully moderated the debate.
Well, and the other thing that came, I think it was yesterday or the day before. The news cycle's so fast that I don't remember exactly when things come out. I think Melania Trump's video came, I think it was yesterday, where she said, "Hey, I have questions. I want answers." And so even Melania Trump's trying to get the answers. And we had an assassination attempt that nobody talks about. So it's embarrassing. And I'm glad he did bring it up. So your most viral moment, you mentioned the MAGA hat. Do you think that was the most viral moment for Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think on a negative standpoint, it was probably the cats and dogs. On the positive, the MAGA hat is kind of the one that stood up. But I also think if you were to do the side-by-side video of him calling her a Marxist and her reaction to it, her reaction was sincere, and she was, you could see the deer in the headlights through her gritted teeth. She had a smile through gritted teeth. I mean, you could tell that he really landed a blow with her there emotionally. And then that was one of the moments I felt like the moderators rescued her.
Well, and then the closing. So after his closing to me was a negative closing. And then after, when he talked to Fox, he's like, "Oh yeah, I was so negative." Because he talked about she had 3.5 years to do it. Why hasn't she done it? Why didn't she do it? We're a nation in serious decline. We're going to end up in a third world war. What these people have done to our country and allowed millions of people to come into our country, and many are criminals, are destroying it. Worst president and worst vice president in the history of our country. And that was his closing. Do you think he should have had a little tweak though? But I wanted just that you need to vote for me because I'm going to bring us out of this. I wanted that line.
No, because he, I don't know that he needs to, because his support is so baked in that, what he needed to do to close. And, I thought he showed great discipline at the beginning of the debate. So that was a win for him. So I said the beginning and the end were both wins for him. But his closing was so strong, and he was, I thought, the thing is that if if enough people like your husband would have stayed to the closing, I think a lot of more people would have said, yeah, he won the debate because he closed so strong and hers was so weak. And, so I thought the closing was a winner for him.
Okay, and then you wrote about her. You actually wrote, you wrote, she used cliche after cliche in her closing statement, that it was her most rehearsed portion of the debate. And then she admitted her greatest strength of her campaign: I'm not Joe Biden and I'm not Donald Trump, but she didn't follow up with who she is, why she's running, and why people should vote for her.
Right. And she admitted, like, that's the one thing that we've all been saying. If you remember my Substack, I was like, there's three phases of Kamala Harris. They are excitement, relief, and regret. We're past the excitement stage.
I forgot about that Substack.
So we're deep in the relief stage. And the relief stage, I write in that Substack more than a month ago that her only thing is to say, hey, I'm not Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And right. She ended the debate
not
with
defining herself. She didn't define herself. I thought that was so extremely weak on her part that basically she's admitting that, hey, listen, vote for me because I'm not Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Like, I made it this far. Go ahead and give me the job. And, I made it to the final interview, so go ahead and give me the job. Well, no, that's not how you get the job. You have to finish the interview. And she's failed to do so far. Okay, well, this is the funniest thing that happened. So it's over. And then Taylor Swift decided to endorse her, sent out the longest statement known to man. And had I been Kamala's people, I would have been so pissed, because it kind of took the wind out of her debate performance. And it was like when RFK the next day came out and endorsed Trump, it killed took the wind out of the sails for the DNC story. So what are your thoughts on that? Which I don't care about Taylor Swift. I saw her in Munich. She was great. But the woman, she's obviously a Dem,
Hey, I can be a Swiftie. I've not been to one of her concerts, but
you need to go.
I'd love to go. I love music. I love listening to different types of music, and certainly could sing along with a couple of her songs, although I'm not somebody who could think of one right this second.
All right, we'll take our spouses. We'll go to the next one. But remember, Europe's like half the cost.
So, I think that, when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is coordinated. They're trying to put an exclamation point on the debate, like the debate moved Taylor Swift, right? And it's obviously that's not what happened. It's a big time celebrity endorsement, but it's a celebrity endorsement. So are women under the age of 35 going to pay more attention to Kamala Harris because Taylor Swift endorsed her? Probably not, because those women were already paying attention to Kamala Harris. And so when you start looking at what does that really do for her, does it really expand the electorate? So both going into the debate, both candidates needed to expand the electorate. Neither one of them did so with their VP pick, which is one of the big, chances to do that. Like Ronald Reagan did with Herbert Walker Bush in 1980. Trump looked to the right and Harris looked to the left. And so I was like, okay, with the debate, they can both expand the electorate. I don't know that either one of them really did that. I don't know that Harris really said, people who are in the middle undecided are going to vote for her because of that debate performance. But I don't know that people in the middle undecided are going to vote for Trump.
I think we're all decided at this point. I have to say, I think we're decided.
I don't think so, because I think there's still people who, I won't say many, but there's still people who are undecided or undecided about whether they vote.
I got invited, Jamie, yesterday on an X space with this comedian that has a couple 100,000 followers. I had him on my show out of LA, and another comedian was his co-host out of LA, and they were both libs that after living in LA under these policies have become Republican. And so, because I asked, what was the conversion? So, so we have to send people to LA to convert them. But
yeah,
I don't know. Everybody in my circles, they've decided. And
yeah, but if you're the guy out there, climbing an electric pole, yeah, maybe you've decided, or if you're delivering Coca-Colas or some of the jobs that I've had in my life delivering furniture, when I wasn't paying attention to politics, you didn't decide until the end. And I think that people have their ideas that, I'm more likely to, I think the New York Times poll was probably correct this weekend, that more people saw Trump as more rational than Harris. When you start breaking into, crosstabs and down poll questions of, you get away from the top line of, who's up 2 points? Where are they up?
Well, but I want a candidate.
Where's the vulnerability?
And I've said this forever. I want one that's talking to the press at every moment. I know what you're thinking. She's hiding in the Biden basement. So what are your final thoughts, Jamie? What have we missed? I mean, we've gone through the whole, I need more combat pay, through the whole evening of it. What have we missed?
You do a great job of covering all the bases, right? So thank you for that. I mean, you've brought things to the table here that I was unaware of, or I didn't see on Twitter or during my research and all of that. So thank you for your diligence and everything you're doing for the cause. It doesn't go unnoticed. I saw Chairman Power, who I know has been on your show several times this past weekend, and
he's great.
Your ears should have been burning because we were saying good things about you, and he thinks the world of you. And awesome. So we just, I think part of it is just keep up the good fight, and I think it's important for your listeners not to take things at face value. It's funny because I created a little TikTok about Kamala Harris's earrings, right? And there's, people are like, they were earpieces. And
I've seen that all day today.
The vitriol that has come back from the left on that, and I'll call it petty, right? Like, because, it's I think it's fun to talk about, but I don't think it doesn't mean anything, right? Like nobody's going to vote whether or not she had, ear things in there. But they are so defensive of her cheating because they know they're going to cheat. And so they know they're cheaters. And so whenever you accuse them of cheating by anything that appears like they're cheating, I've gotten more pushback from Democrats on that post than any other post I've had about her policies, about anything else. And
that means we're over the target, because I've been called the C word, the B word. Nobody's ever called me these words, and especially this week. Oh, my favorite one last week. Somebody said that I must have had a sex change, and so I'm like, really? That's your team, not mine.
Oh, that's
you
funny.
have to laugh. It doesn't even bother me now.
I'll say that my little. So I posted that little TikTok. It's 15 seconds.
Oh my gosh, you have to send it to me. I missed that one. Damn it.
It's 15 seconds, and I have 13,000 views on it already.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's my Karen picture.
It's just silly.
Her.
Like, it's just silly. Like, her earrings are earpieces, because there's this company out there that has a very similar looking earring that is, basically an iPod ear,
we know what it
microphone
was.
and
Obama
speaker.
was telling her what to say. Oh, Jamie. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Please share that video with me, and then
I'll send it to you.
I'll be calling you back. A great roundup of the debate, and we've been talking with Jamie Miller. He's at Rep Jam and Reasonable. What is it? I always forget what your. I just said it all. Reasonable.
The Substack is reasonable arguments, and if you're interested in my book, it's American Speeches That Changed History. You can find that on Amazon. So,
well, you're brilliant. And
all of those places.
You're one of my favorite guests already. So I'll be calling you back, because more to come, I'm sure. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for joining.
I'm available anytime. We'll see you.
Okay. Thanks for joining Veronica Live.